Matthew 18 is divided into 5 sections. Matthew 18, 1 through 7. Become like a little child. When disciples ask who is greatest, Jesus places a child among them and makes humble childlikeness necessary for kingdom entrance and greatness. Welcoming such a child welcomes Jesus, while causing vulnerable believers to stumble deserves severe judgment despite the inevitability of temptations. Verse 4 is especially worth remembering. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Verses 8 through 14. The Father will not lose the little one. Jesus commands radical removal of whatever repeatedly causes sin, because life is worth more than bodily wholeness ending in fire. Little ones must not be despised because heaven attends them, and the shepherd's search for one stray pictures the Father's will that none perish. A helpful verse to hold on to here is verse 14. In the same way your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish. Verses 15 through 21. Winning back a sinning brother. A disciple should address a sinning brother privately, then with witnesses, and finally through the gathered church, treating persistent refusal as broken fellowship. Jesus gives the community binding and loosing responsibility and promises his presence among even 2 or 3 gathered in his name before Peter asks about forgiveness's limit. Keep verse 20 in mind as you review this section. For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them. Verses 22 through 28. Forgiven an unpayable debt. Jesus replaces Peter's proposed 7-fold limit with extravagant, ongoing forgiveness and tells of a king settling accounts. A servant owing an impossible sum begs patience, receives complete cancellation through the master's compassion, then immediately finds a fellow servant owing far less. Verse 27 captures an important idea in this passage. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. Verses 29 through 35. Forgive from the heart. The fellow servant begs with identical words, but is refused mercy and imprisoned, distressing witnesses who report the injustice. The master reverses his leniency and hands the unforgiving servant to punishment, warning that the Heavenly Father expects forgiven people to forgive from the heart. A memorable verse from this section is verse 35. This is how my Heavenly Father will treat each of you, unless you forgive your brother or sister from your heart. We are about to read through Matthew chapter 18 from the beginning. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who, then, is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" He called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of the things that cause people to stumble. Such things must come. But woe to the person through whom they come. If your hand or your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life maimed or crippled than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be thrown into eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into the fire of hell. See that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven. What do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go to look for the one that wandered off? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he is happier about that 1 sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. In the same way your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the 2 of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take 1 or 2 others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you that if 2 of you on earth agree about anything they ask for, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them." Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times. Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. At this, the servant fell on his knees before him. "Be patient with me," he begged, "and I will pay back everything." The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. But when that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins. He grabbed him and began to choke him. "Pay back what you owe me," he demanded. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, "Be patient with me, and I will pay it back." But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were outraged and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. "You wicked servant," he said, "I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had on you?" In anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother or sister from your heart.